The paramedics broke down the door at 3:03 p.m. They found her on the living room floor, 31 years old, unconscious, dying. They rushed her to the hospital. The doctors tried everything. Nothing worked. At 5:41 p.m., Jessica Martinez was gone. 6 hours earlier, she'd been fine, celebrating her birthday, eating cake with family, excited about her wedding in 6 months. What happened in those 6 hours? The autopsy found nothing. No disease, no drugs, no explanation. For 19 years, it was a mystery. Then someone found a diary, and everything changed. If cases like this interest you, where the truth takes decades to surface, hit that subscribe button. Now let me tell you what really happened to Jessica Martinez. October 12th, 1996, Burlington, Vermont. Jessica Martinez woke up that morning excited. It was her 31st birthday, and this wasn't just any birthday. This was the last birthday she'd celebrate as Jessica Martinez. In 6 months, she'd be married. In 6 months, she'd be Jessica Cooper. Her fiancé Ryan had already left for work. He was a high school teacher, had early classes. But he'd kissed her goodbye and promised to see her at dinner. Her family was gathering tonight. Her friends were coming over. But first, there was the tradition that had existed since Jessica was 16 years old. Amanda would bring the cake. Amanda Martinez was Jessica's older sister, 4 years older, 35 years old that October. And every single year since Jessica turned 16, Amanda had baked her birthday cake red velvet with cream cheese frosting, Jessica's favorite. It wasn't just a cake, it was proof of their bond. Proof that Amanda remembered, proof that Amanda cared. Other things in their lives had changed over 15 years. Relationships had come and gone. Jobs had shifted. Friends had moved away. But the cake was constant. Amanda showed up. Amanda baked. Jessica ate the first slice with Amanda watching, and every year Jessica said the same thing. Perfect, just like always. It was ritual. It was tradition. It was love, baked into layers of red velvet and sweet cream cheese frosting. Jessica Martinez was everything people said accountants were supposed to be. Organized, detail-oriented, reliable. She worked at a small firm downtown, managing books for local businesses, making sure numbers added up, making sure everything balanced. Her co-workers described her as the person who never forgot a deadline. Her friends described her as the person who always remembered birthdays. Her family described her as the glue that held everyone together. Jessica had never been the flashy type. She didn't need attention. She didn't crave the spotlight. She was happy with a quiet life, a stable job, a man she loved, a future she could count on. Ryan Cooper was that future. They'd met 2 years earlier at a community theater production. Jessica had been dragging props backstage. Ryan had been playing a minor role. They'd literally bumped into each other, and Ryan had helped her pick up the pieces of a fake vase she'd dropped. They'd started talking. They'd gone for coffee after the show. They'd discovered they both loved old movies, hiking, and terrible puns. 6 months later, they were inseparable. Ryan was 33, teaching history at the local high school, and he was exactly the kind of steady, thoughtful man Jessica had always imagined herself with. In September 1996, just weeks before Jessica's birthday, Ryan had proposed. They'd been hiking at their favorite trail when he'd gotten down on one knee. Jessica had said yes before he'd even finished asking. The wedding was set for April 1997. Jessica was planning every detail: the venue, the flowers, the menu. She had a binder full of magazine clippings and handwritten notes. She was happy. Genuinely, completely happy. Amanda Martinez worked in real estate. She'd been doing it for almost 10 years, and she was good at it. She knew Burlington. She knew the market. She knew how to read people, how to figure out what they really wanted versus what they thought they wanted. She made decent money. She lived alone in a small house on the edge of town. She had friends, though not close ones. She had family, though she often felt slightly outside of it. The one constant in Amanda's life, the one relationship that seemed to anchor her, was her relationship with Jessica. They talked on the phone every day. They had lunch together twice a week. And every year, without fail, Amanda baked Jessica's birthday cake. It was her gift, her tradition, her way of saying, "I'm your sister. I'll always be here." But something had shifted in the months before Jessica's 31st birthday. Jessica was engaged now. Jessica was moving forward. Jessica was building a life that would inevitably include Amanda. Less and less, Jessica would have a husband. Eventually, Jessica would have children. Jessica's birthday cakes would come from her husband, from her kids, from her new family. Amanda's tradition would fade. Amanda's role would diminish. And there was something else. Something Amanda had never told anyone. Something she had hidden for years, buried so deep she almost believed it wasn't real anymore. Ryan Cooper, Jessica's fiancé, the quiet history teacher everyone loved, had been Amanda's boyfriend first. Not recently. Years ago. Back in college. Amanda had dated Ryan for 2 years during her junior and senior year at the University of Vermont. It had been serious. Amanda had thought they might get married. She'd imagined a future with him. Modest house. Quiet life. Maybe kids. But Ryan had ended it. Gently but firmly. Right after graduation, he'd said he needed time. He'd said he wasn't ready. He'd said he wanted to focus on his career. Amanda had been devastated. She'd loved him. She'd imagined growing old with him. When the relationship ended, she'd felt like she'd lost everything. For years, Amanda had moved on, or so she told herself. She'd dated other people. She'd built her career. She'd rarely thought about Ryan Cooper. And then, in the summer of 1996, Jessica had mentioned she'd met someone, a teacher. Sweet. Thoughtful. His name was Ryan. Amanda's stomach had dropped. It couldn't be the same Ryan. Vermont was a small state, but it wasn't that small. But when Jessica had shown her a photo, Amanda had known immediately it was him. The same Ryan. The Ryan who had been hers first. The Ryan who had broken her heart. And now he was with Jessica. Now he was going to marry Jessica, who had everything. Jessica, who everyone loved. Jessica, who was younger and had her whole life figured out. Jessica, who would get the wedding Amanda had never had. Jessica, who would get the life Amanda had always wanted. It wasn't fair. It wasn't right. And Amanda, for the first time in her life, felt something dark and terrible growing inside her. Something she couldn't control. Something that whispered to her late at night when she couldn't sleep. Something that said, "Why does Jessica get everything? Why does Jessica get him? Why does Jessica get to be happy when I'm still alone?" Amanda never confronted Jessica about Ryan's past. She never told Jessica they had dated. She smiled at dinners. She congratulated Jessica on the engagement. She helped Jessica pick out wedding invitations. And when Jessica's birthday approached, Amanda told her, "Of course I'll make your cake, just like always." But this year, the cake would be different. This year, Amanda would add something new to the recipe. Something Jessica would never taste. Something that would take effect slowly, invisibly, over the course of hours. Something that would look, to everyone else, like a tragic accident. Like natural causes. Like a young woman whose heart simply stopped beating for no reason anyone could explain. Amanda had been planning this for weeks. She'd done the research. She'd read medical journals in the library. Careful not to check anything out. Careful not to leave a trail she'd learned about ethylene glycol, the main ingredient in antifreeze, sweet. colorless, odorless, lethal in the right dose. She'd learned that symptoms would start 3 to 4 hours after ingestion: nausea, dizziness, confusion, rapid heartbeat, organ failure. She'd learned that by the time someone got to the hospital, it would be too late. She'd learned that in 1996, standard toxicology screens didn't test for ethylene glycol unless doctors had a specific reason to suspect it. And why would they suspect it? Jessica was healthy. Jessica had no enemies. Jessica had no reason anyone would want to harm her. The doctors would rule it sudden cardiac death, cause undetermined a medical mystery, a tragic loss. And Amanda would get away with it. She'd calculated the dose carefully. Not so much that Jessica would die immediately, that would be suspicious, but enough that Jessica would appear to have a sudden, unexplained medical crisis. Heart failure, organ shutdown, the kind of thing that could happen to anyone, even a healthy 31-year-old woman. October 12th, 1996 was a Saturday. Jessica woke up excited. She loved her birthday. She loved that Amanda always made her cake. She loved that her family would gather that evening for dinner. She loved that Ryan would be there, that this would be her last birthday as Jessica Martinez before she became Jessica Cooper. Amanda arrived at Jessica's apartment at 10 a.m., carrying the cake in a white bakery box. Jessica opened the door, smiling. "You're early," she said. Amanda smiled back. "I wanted to make sure it was perfect." They sat in Jessica's small kitchen, drinking coffee, talking about the wedding, about Ryan, about life. Jessica cut the first slice of cake at 10:30 a.m. She took a bite. "Perfect," she said, "just like always." Amanda watched her eat. She watched Jessica take another bite, and another. Jessica finished the slice. She poured herself more coffee. She talked about the honeymoon they were planning, about the house she and Ryan wanted to buy, about the future that stretched out before her, bright and endless, and full of everything Amanda would never have. Amanda left Jessica's apartment at 11 a.m. She hugged Jessica goodbye. "See you tonight for dinner," Amanda said. Jessica smiled. "Can't wait." Amanda drove home. She went inside. She sat on her couch. She waited. What happened next would unfold exactly as Amanda had planned. Jessica felt fine for the first few hours. She cleaned her apartment. She called Ryan. She got ready for the birthday dinner that evening. But around 2 p.m., Jessica started feeling strange. Dizzy. Nauseous. She thought maybe she'd eaten too much cake on an empty stomach. She lay down on her couch. She closed her eyes. The dizziness got worse. Her heart started racing. She felt confused. She tried to stand up but couldn't. She reached for the phone on the coffee table. She dialed 911. The dispatcher answered. Jessica tried to speak, but her words came out slurred. I don't feel... Something's wrong." The dispatcher kept her on the line. "An ambulance is on the way. Stay with me. What's your name?" But Jessica couldn't answer. The phone slipped from her hand. She lost consciousness. The ambulance arrived at Jessica's apartment at 2:54 p.m. Paramedics found Jessica on the floor, unresponsive, her breathing shallow, her pulse weak and rapid. They rushed her to Fletcher Allen Hospital. Doctors worked frantically to stabilize her. They ran tests. They checked for stroke, for heart attack. For allergic reaction, Jessica's heart stopped at 5:23 p.m. They performed CPR. They shocked her heart. They tried everything. At 5:41 p.m., Jessica Martinez was pronounced gone. She was 31 years old. She had been fine that morning. She had eaten birthday cake with her sister. 6 hours later, she was gone. The doctors had no explanation. The tests showed nothing definitive. Jessica's family was called. They rushed to the hospital. Ryan arrived, devastated, unable to comprehend what had happened. And Amanda, when she got the call, collapsed. She screamed. She cried. She seemed to break apart entirely. At the hospital, Amanda held Jessica's hand. She sobbed. "I just saw her this morning. I just gave her the cake. She was fine. She was happy. How is this possible?" The grief in Amanda's voice was real. That was the sick truth. Amanda was devastated. Amanda had loved Jessica, and Amanda had taken her life anyway. The autopsy was performed 2 days later. The medical examiner, Dr. Robert Harris, conducted a thorough examination. He found no signs of trauma, no signs of disease, no obvious cause. Jessica's heart was healthy. Her brain was normal. Her organs showed no abnormalities. Dr. Harris ran a standard toxicology screen. It came back negative for common substances: alcohol, illegal materials. In 1996, toxicology testing was far more limited than it would become in later years. The tests looked for common things, but they didn't test for everything. They couldn't test for everything. Some substances required specialized testing. Some substances required a specific reason to look for them. And in Jessica's case, there was no reason to suspect anything unusual. She was a healthy 31-year-old woman. She had no enemies. She had no reason anyone would want to harm her. Dr. Harris's final conclusion: sudden cardiac event, cause undetermined. It wasn't satisfying. It wasn't complete. But it was the best answer 1996 medicine could provide. Jessica's memorial service was held on October 19, 1996. More than 200 people attended. Ryan spoke, barely able to finish his words. Jessica's parents spoke, destroyed by grief, and Amanda spoke last. She talked about the sister she loved, the sister she would miss every day, the sister whose birthday cake she would never make again. People in the audience wept. Amanda's grief seemed bottomless. In the weeks and months after Jessica's passing, Amanda became almost a member of Jessica's family in a new way. She visited Jessica's parents constantly. She helped them go through Jessica's belongings. She organized a scholarship in Jessica's name at the local community college. She seemed determined to keep Jessica's memory alive, to make sure Jessica wasn't forgotten. Ryan Cooper, devastated by Jessica's loss, moved away from Vermont 6 months later. He couldn't stay in the place where he'd planned to build a life with Jessica. He took a teaching job in New Hampshire. He and Amanda exchanged a few emails over the years, grief connecting them. But they never spoke about their past relationship. Amanda never told him. Some secrets, she decided, should stay buried. Amanda herself seemed to age rapidly after Jessica's passing. The light went out of her eyes. She became quieter, more withdrawn. She still worked. She still functioned. But people who knew her said she was never the same. She never mentioned Ryan and Jessica's past connection. She never remarried. She never seemed to move forward. It was as if she had frozen on October 12, 1996, the day she lost her sister. Years passed. 1996 became 2000. 2000 became 2005. 2010. The world changed. Technology advanced. Medicine advanced. Forensic science became more sophisticated. DNA analysis became routine. Toxicology testing became more sensitive, more comprehensive, able to detect substances that would have been invisible in 1996. But Jessica Martinez's case remained closed. Her passing remained unexplained. Her family had long since accepted that they would never have answers. Amanda continued her life, such as it was. She still lived in Burlington. She still worked in real estate. She had a daughter, Sophie, from a brief relationship in the early 2000s. Sophie was born in 2002, grew up knowing about Aunt Jessica, the aunt she'd never met, the aunt who had been gone before Sophie was born. Amanda told Sophie stories about Jessica. She showed Sophie photos. She made sure Sophie knew that Jessica had existed, that Jessica had mattered, that Jessica had been loved. In September 2015, Amanda was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The prognosis was grim. Months, maybe weeks. Amanda began putting her affairs in order. She wrote a will. She organized her documents. She prepared Sophie, now 13 years old, for what was coming. Amanda passed away on November 3rd, 2015. She was 54 years old. Sophie, devastated but trying to be strong, inherited her mother's house. In the weeks after Amanda's passing, Sophie began the painful process of going through her mother's belongings, clothes, books, papers, photos. The house was full of memories, full of a life Sophie had only partially known. In December 2015, Sophie went into the attic. She was looking for Christmas decorations. She found boxes, old boxes, boxes that looked like they hadn't been opened in years. Sophie started going through them. She found old tax returns, old real estate files, old photos from Amanda's childhood. And then, in a small cardboard box labeled personal, Sophie found a journal. It was old. The cover was worn. The pages were yellowed. Sophie opened it. The first entry was dated January 1996. Sophie started reading. The journal was Amanda's. It detailed her daily life in 1996. Work, errands, thoughts about her sister, thoughts about being alone. And then, in August 1996, the entries changed. Amanda wrote about learning that Jessica was engaged. Amanda wrote about discovering who Jessica's fiancé was. Ryan. The Ryan. Amanda's Ryan. The entries became darker, angrier, more bitter. Why does Jessica get everything? Why does she get him? Why does she get to be happy? And then, in September 1996, Amanda wrote something that made Sophie's blood run cold. I can't let this happen. I can't let her have him. I can't let her have the life that should have been mine. I know what I need to do. I've been researching. I've been planning. The cake, it's always the cake. Jessica loves the cake. Jessica trusts the cake. Jessica trusts me. I'll make it special this year. I'll add something she'll never taste. Something that will look like natural causes. Something they'll never detect. Ethylene glycol. Sweet odorless. Undetectable in 1996 testing. I've done the research. I know the dose. I know the timing. Jessica's birthday is in 3 weeks. I'll bake her the cake, she'll eat it. She'll thank me. And 6 hours later, her heart will stop. And everyone will think it was just a tragedy, just bad luck, just one of those things that happens sometimes. Sophie dropped the journal. Her hands were shaking. She couldn't breathe. She read the entry again. And again. It couldn't be real. It couldn't be true. Her mother couldn't have. But the words were there, clear, detailed, specific. Sophie kept reading. The next entry was dated October 13th, 1996, the day after Jessica's birthday. The day after Jessica passed away. Amanda wrote, "It's done. Jessica is gone. Everyone thinks it was natural causes. The doctors found nothing. I knew they wouldn't. I knew 1996 testing couldn't detect ethylene glycol unless they were specifically looking for it. And why would they look for it? Jessica was healthy. Jessica had no enemies. I baked the cake yesterday morning. I added the substance to the frosting. Jessica ate a slice at 10:30 a.m. I left at 11. By 2 p.m., she was feeling sick. By 5:41 p.m., she was gone. It worked exactly as I planned. And now I have to live with what I've done. I thought I would feel relief. I thought I would feel satisfaction. Instead, I feel nothing. Empty. Hollow. Broken. I took my sister's life, the sister I loved. The sister who trusted me. The sister who never knew I hated her. What have I become? The entries continued. Days, weeks, months. Amanda wrote about her guilt, her grief, her horror at what she'd done. She wrote about attending Jessica's funeral, about speaking at the memorial service, about lying to everyone, about pretending to mourn when she was the reason Jessica was gone. She wrote about Ryan leaving Vermont, about never being able to tell him the truth, about realizing that even with Jessica gone, she would never have him, would never have the life she'd imagined. The journal entries became sporadic after 1997. Amanda seemed to have stopped writing regularly, but the damage was done. The truth was there, in Amanda's own handwriting, a confession, a detailed account. Evidence that Jessica Martinez had not passed away of natural causes. Evidence that Jessica had been taken by her own sister. Evidence that had been hidden in an attic for 19 years. Sophie sat in her mother's attic, holding the journal, trying to understand what she should do. Her mother was gone. Her mother couldn't be held accountable. Her mother couldn't face consequences. But Jessica's family deserved to know the truth. Jessica deserved justice. Even 19 years later, Ryan deserved to know what had really happened to the woman he loved. The world deserved to know that Jessica Martinez's passing had not been a tragic accident. It had been deliberate, calculated, planned. On December 18, 2015, Sophie called the Burlington Police Department. She asked to speak to a detective. She said she had information about something that occurred in 1996. Detective Sarah Martinez took the call. Sophie explained who she was. She explained what she'd found. She read portions of the journal over the phone. Detective Martinez was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "I need you to bring that journal to the police station today. Don't touch it any more than you already have. This could be evidence." Sophie brought the journal to the police station that afternoon. Detective Martinez handled it carefully. She photographed every page. She documented the chain of custody. She opened a case file. Jessica Martinez's case, closed for 19 years, was suddenly open again. Detective Martinez knew that even with Amanda's confession in the journal, the case would require more evidence Amanda was deceased, so there would be no prosecution. But Jessica's family deserved answers. Jessica deserved to have the truth on record. Martinez contacted Dr. Elizabeth Park, the current chief medical examiner for Vermont. She explained the situation. She asked if it would be possible to test Jessica's remains for ethylene glycol. Even 19 years later, Dr. Park was skeptical, but intrigued. Ethylene glycol could potentially be detected in bone tissue even decades after exposure, especially if the dose had been significant. It was a long shot, but it was worth trying. On January 15, 2016, with the permission of Jessica's family, Jessica Martinez's body was exhumed from Lakeview Cemetery in Burlington. It was a cold, gray day. Jessica's parents, now in their 70s, stood at the edge of the cemetery, watching the process, trying to understand how their daughter's case was being investigated again after nearly 2 decades. They had been told about Amanda's journal. They had been told about Amanda's confession. They couldn't comprehend it. Amanda had loved Jessica. Amanda had grieved Jessica. How could Amanda have been the one who took Jessica's life? Dr. Park conducted the examination on January 20, 2016. She collected samples of bone tissue from Jessica's remains. She sent them to a specialized toxicology laboratory that used advanced chromatography techniques, far beyond what had been available in 1996. The lab processed the samples carefully. They looked specifically for ethylene glycol and its metabolites. The results came back on February 3, 2016. Positive. Jessica Martinez's bone tissue contained elevated levels of calcium oxalate crystals, a metabolic byproduct of ethylene glycol exposure. The levels were consistent with acute exposure, not accidental contact. Amanda's journal had been telling the truth. Jessica had been harmed intentionally. Jessica's passing had not been natural causes. It had been a deliberate act. On February 10, 2016, the Burlington Police Department held a press conference. Detective Martinez stood at the podium. She explained that Jessica Martinez's 1996 case, originally ruled as sudden cardiac event of undetermined cause, had been reclassified. She explained that Amanda Martinez, Jessica's sister, had confessed to taking Jessica's life in a journal found after Amanda's passing in 2015. She explained that forensic testing had confirmed the presence of ethylene glycol in Jessica's remains. She explained that while Amanda could not face legal consequences due to her passing, the case was officially solved. Jessica's family had answers. Jessica had justice, at least in the form of truth. The press conference made national news. The case became a cautionary tale about how far jealousy could drive someone, how betrayal could come from the person you trusted most, how something terrible could hide behind a smile and a birthday cake. Jessica's parents, Robert and Linda Martinez, released a statement. They said they were grateful for the truth, devastated by the truth, and forever changed by the truth. They said they would never understand how Amanda could have done this. They said they would remember Jessica not as a victim, but as a daughter who loved life, who was excited about her future, who trusted her sister. They said Jessica's memory would not be defined by how she passed away, but by how she lived. Ryan Cooper, reached for comment by reporters, said simply, "Jessica deserved so much more. She deserved the life she was building. She deserved to be happy. I will carry her memory with me always." Sophie Martinez released her own statement through her lawyer. She said she was horrified by what her mother had done. She said she would never understand it. She said she hoped that by coming forward with the journal, she had done the right thing. She said she was sorry to Jessica's family. She said she wished she could undo what her mother had done. The case of Jessica Martinez became a teaching example in forensic science programs. It demonstrated the importance of advances in toxicology testing. It showed how cases that seemed closed could be reopened with new technology. It highlighted the need for thorough investigation even in cases that appeared to be natural. And it reminded the world that sometimes the most dangerous person is the one you trust most, the one who bakes your birthday cake, the one who smiles at you across the kitchen table, the one who says they love you while planning something unthinkable. Jessica Martinez's story is a tragedy, but it's also a testament to the persistence of truth. It took 19 years. It took a daughter finding her mother's journal. It took advances in forensic science. But the truth came out. Jessica's case was no longer a mystery. It was no longer unexplained. It was understood. And Jessica's name was no longer attached to a question mark. It was attached to justice.